Hey, everybody.
Hello, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch.
We're all
We
up
are
in
live
here.
across the Snoof Kingdom today with the breakdown. I'm with her talking about Knock Down the House.
Yes.
Really excited. We'll wait a little bit, let some people come in. Sam's back.
Sam is back.
Hey guys, sorry my laptop crashed.
Having some technical difficulties.
But in the words of Bill, always have a second or third device ready.
That's right.
Yes. Thank the Lord.
The
Okay.
phone cracker will be live from his toaster. All right, guys.
Gosh.
We've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now. Hopefully, everybody was able to get on Netflix and watch the documentary.
Yes.
I thought it was amazing. I had no expectations going into it. I knew it was about AOC. Not so much that it was about these other ladies, but about their political campaigns, and it definitely delivered.
Yeah, it did. I kind of was expecting to see AOC in a kind of way just be like so badass the entire time, and I think that's just because of like how she presents right now in her position. But you see a lot of vulnerability from her. Like she's so unsure. She's like struggling. You know, it's just like this person that we have this persona of right now. It's definitely not her in her campaign. It's something completely different, and I love that we're here to talk about this because it's about women in positions of power that we don't ever really get to see much of.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I like that AOC has the demeanor of a badass, and really opened up and showed different sides of her as a person. And I personally really endeared me to her. I know she's doing a lot of good work in terms of the things that she's fighting for in Congress, but I didn't know that much about her going into this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely rooting more for her.
Hi, you guys. If you are here with us today, what I want to do before we get into it is just reintroduce all of ourselves here. We have the members here of SUFE. I want to first give the floor to our guest here. And I want her to be able to introduce herself to us and who she is and what she does. So you have the floor.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Alannah. It's so nice to be here with all of you today. Been really excited about what SUFE is doing. And this was a great film, so I'm really excited to talk about it with you all. So I am a member of the Valkyrie Ensemble, which we're an organization. We're primarily based in Chicago, although we do have a bit more of a national scope these days with the pandemic and everything being virtual. But the Valkyrie Ensemble is an organization that formed a couple years back. Nope, 1 year and a couple of months ago. Feels like it was 10 years ago, but it was not. And we are an organization that seeks to promote women in and through music. And specifically, we focus with classical music, mostly vocal music and opera, but all music. And we're a group of ladies trying to lift each other up and help our industry be a little bit more inclusive, less bad, more good.
Right.
Less bad.
Less bad. So yeah, again, super nice to be here. I'd love to talk about the film. And if you want to learn more about the Valkyrie Ensemble, check us out at valkyrieensemble.com. And
nobody's gonna blame you for thinking that the last year has been 10 years.
Oh my gosh. I really, really had a moment there where I was like, yep, that was 5 years ago. Woof.
Well, guys, hopefully everybody had a chance to watch Knock Down the House. And I think Shamika's prepared some questions for us to help guide a discussion around what we watched in the film. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Yeah, so I did have some questions. I'll kind of pick and prod at them as we're going. So I want to thank some of the people who's already started showing up. Alma, thank you for being here and just always supporting. Alma's always here. Alma's my friend from high school, you guys. And Ron Sanders, thank you for coming in. So the first question I prepared, because grassroots is something that we talk a lot about here, something that we've been in meetings before and we've been like, we need to be doing more grassroots everything. At least that's what I'm always saying.
We're going to do nicknames. Shanika's nickname is going to be Grassroots.
I love grassroots everything. So so we believe in that term here. We believe in what that means, and we see that grassroots can help build the foundation of change in community. So the question I have is, the first question of this particular prompt is, in what ways did you see the effectiveness of grassroots campaigning within this documentary?
Well, one of the first things that we see is AOC actually knocking doors, going around, which in the same vein that makes the last year feel like 10, it was very strange to see her walking around knocking on people's doors.
And people not knowing who she was at that point. Like, if she knocks on your door, you know who that is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they gave me anxiety until I realized that that's how everything will operate again here in, hopefully 6 months or so. So, at the end, she was the only one to, I guess, spoiler alert, she was the only one to win her primary.
That year, but Cori Bush came back.
Cori Bush did come back.
Yeah. Is in the house right now.
Yeah. I was actually, this is a bit of a segue, but I need to go back and refresh myself with what happened, because I'm sitting here looking, I was like, I know Cori Bush is actually in right now, in Congress.
Now she's
killing it.
Yeah, figure out what happened there, because I was definitely expecting her to win her primary, but so yeah, AOC is out there knocking doors out there in Queens and Bronx, and so obviously very successful for her, starting that grassroots against the incumbent there.
Yeah,
and I think that was really clearly shown at the debate that her opponent didn't even show up to.
Yeah,
there wasn't a lot of people there, but he didn't even bother to show up, and he was making excuses for not being there. But she's being the leader of this grassroots movement, is at every event she can be. She's knocking on every door she can. She's out there on the street asking people for signatures so she can even get on the ballot. And that was really cool to see.
Was I the only one who felt really bad for the proxy of that debate?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I would have loved to have been the proxy at that
honestly, I had so much respect for AOC, because the very first thing she said was like, I have a lot of respect for this woman, but I'm about to tailor the dude who she's representing a new one.
She's always in that way very female friendly, and I think that's something that people don't expect to see from women in politics, because they're like, I want to see this woman tear down this other woman so nicely, regardless of what side this other lady is on. I just want to see it. So I thought that when she stood there and said, I definitely respect the work that you're doing in this community, but Crowley, on the other hand, was like, that was the most fun thing to see. I think the thing that makes this documentary kind of support the effectiveness of grassroots for me was that in every turn you saw her use her family, and the other candidates were using their families as a way to kind of spread the word and using their friends and their colleagues. And then also the community itself was just so essential to what they were doing. I never seen a lot, these bigger politicians, we never see constituents. We never really see the focus on the people who are actually voting. And within this documentary, you see her making herself a presence, known on the streets to them, known in their homes, known in their community.
Yeah, I think two things about grassroots specifically stuck out to me in this film, and those two moments were one, when AOC was at a town hall, I think, and she was like, all right, you all know 5 to 10 people, and those people know 5 to 10 people. And I think, that's something that's said a lot, but it just showed that it truly worked.
Yes.
That getting the message out person to person can be just as valuable, if not more valuable, than sort of big marketing schemes or anything like that. And then the other moment for me was when they were it was her, I think, and some other candidates were all sitting on stage, and the moderator was like, who here won't take money from super PACs? And only 2 people raised their hands.
She was like, nope.
Yeah, and everybody else was like,
right.
Yeah.
I think the biggest embodiment, honestly, in my opinion, of the fact that this is a grassroots movement, not only that they're not going to take corporations' money, but she kept saying throughout the entire documentary, I'm not getting elected, we're getting elected. I'm representing us. It's not just me, it's us. And I think that's something that people can really resonate with.
Yeah.
The sincerity there is evident.
She's a people candidate.
This was, I think, a really small detail, and I might not be correct about it, but Amy over in Nevada, she was talking at one point to her campaign manager about how they had no idea what they were doing. And it really made it sound like they all just kind of got together and they were empowered and said, we need to make change. Not that necessarily like this guy was a professional campaign manager, but he was someone who was also passionate and wanted to help. And even though he didn't know necessarily what he was doing, they figured it out and they ran a really, really strong campaign, which I think, as one of the founding members of SUF, I really resonated with.
Yeah,
we don't necessarily know all of the ins and outs of starting and operating an organization, and maybe Alannah can speak a little bit to this too, with Valkyrie. But we may not be the most qualified. I don't have years of experience in development, but we're all really passionate, and we do have some skills, and we're figuring it out as we go.
We know more than when we started. I think that.
Oh yeah, a lot more now. A lot more.
Yeah, and I know you guys are still pretty young as an organization, but Valkyrie being around, a whole year plus.
We haven't been around 10 years like Valkyrie.
Yeah, we're ancient. As old as time. Institution has always been here. But yeah, I mean, I resonated with that as well. Just sort of that, like, you go in because you don't see anybody else doing the work that you want to see done, and you pick up skills along the way. Hopefully, I think I picked up some skills. Hopefully.
Yeah. I think the other question I kind of wanted to, I'm going to just like go over and jump in, because it is Women's History Month. There was a point in with Cori Bush. She was implying that women, especially women of color, must look a certain way to be accepted into certain positions in our society, specifically in the political sphere, within the public eye. And so I know I kind of was tailoring this towards me and Alannah when I wrote it, but it's like, how can you relate to these statements as a woman? But for the rest of you guys, if you can't personally relate to this because this isn't your experience, have you experienced women being held to these standards regarding their image and the policing of their image?
Well, I appreciate you opening it up to the floor. I think, you obviously have the most experience with this as a Black woman. Alannah has, I'm sure, experience also as a woman. But honestly, Shamika, this was not something that I would have thought about if we were not having this discussion like this in the space. So I have nothing to say here.
Me specifically, my mom is a pastor, and most people, it is getting more of both men and women, but most of the time, a lot of people will think of pastor as a masculine job, and so there's a lot of thoughts that people have already about what they expect from their pastors. And I know that my mom used to get attacked even for her looks because they didn't want her up there as pastor. They wanted a male as pastor, so they would attack her on her looks. They would attack her on just all these different things that really did not matter to what she was doing for the ministry and what she was trying to accomplish, but it would still just be small things that she also had to, like, oh yeah, I guess I also have to make sure that I put on this, or I have to do that before I can talk about even God. Like it.
I don't know. For me, when Cori said that, I mean, I thought about everything from like her hair to her makeup to what she was wearing as soon as she brought it up, because at first I was just like, oh, she's running for this position. She looks nice. She looks groomed. Even in the picture, she was just like, oh, I hope that this captures my melanin nice enough. I hope I don't look washed, and it's just like all of that stuff. She's overly policing her look just to fit into what she thinks is an appropriate, I guess, image for a politician as a female. And so, yeah, I think I do that every single day going into work. Like, is my hair looking okay? Is it like, constantly worrying about things that probably other women aren't worrying about because of the way that I'm going to be perceived in a space, in a position. But, I don't know. So like for her, I think it may be different. I also think it's different for white women. So. I'll pass the buck over to you.
Yeah. So I'll take up the mantle for we whites for a second here. Yeah, I read an article a while ago about the way female candidates are talked about in the media and how often they're talked about in terms of their clothes. And then another common one that comes up is the haircut.
Mm,
And I know it's just like an extra layer for women who don't, have white um, hair. But like they'll say, they'll take somebody down and say, well, this person just paid $190 for a haircut. But they never say that about a man. And also it doesn't matter because if a woman shows up and her hair's all over the place, you're gonna hear about it. But if a guy shows up, I mean, if a man shows up and his hair's out of place, nobody's gonna probably comment on it at all.
yeah.
I was also thinking about, in addition to how you look, and I think AOC had a bit at the very beginning where she was talking about how there's so many
Yes.
decisions that go into, like, do you want to present very feminine? Do you want to present a little masculine? What's going to come across as strong? But if you present too masculine, what are they going to say about that? I was also thinking about, in addition to appearance, just the amount of tightrope walking that goes in for these female candidates on their tone and how they come across, the way they speak,
Hmm.
especially if they are considered emotional, like over emotional or not emotional enough, um, how that's weaponized against them often.
Yeah, and I think with AOC there was moments where I think when she was like, I'm so nervous to go against Crowley and speak against him because all the things he could say to me, you could
Mhm.
definitely see like those gender norms playing in because it was times where she was like, I'm not sure how I'm going to attack this, and she didn't know if she was going to go in and be more aggressive or assertive or be like more reserved. But then I think when she's in there, she's like, I'm just going to do me. And then
Yeah.
she's in there and then she's like attacking but being friendly all at the same
Mhm.
time. So I didn't know what to make of it. I just know that by the end of it, he got owned in,
Yeah.
in both of those debates. And I was like, okay, I think that she figured out the balance. And I think that's kind of what it is for women, is always figuring out the balance.
Yeah. It's really a tightrope
Yeah,
sort of
and walk it
situation.
every day. Yeah.
Yeah, and at that same point, I don't remember who. I think it was. I can't remember, but someone had gotten advice. One of the women had gotten the advice to not appear to be too aggressive or emotional because people will take that as a sign of weakness. And it was talked about
Hmm.
how terrible advice that is. And I think if you look at the speeches that they gave afterwards, and AOC and her rhetoric, even her tweets, how they kind of just completely ignored that, as they should have. But the fact that advice is flying around from the establishment and these established politicians towards women just kind of goes to show how careful that these women have to think about, not even the way they appear, but the way they talk.
I believe that was
Hmm.
the woman from West Virginia. And
Okay.
can we say swear words on this stream?
I do.
Well, I won't say it. Oh, you do? Okay, okay. Because I think the exact advice she got was, you have to come across like a bitch, but like you're gonna be their bitch.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she was like, that's so dehumanizing.
Hmm.
I literally said, I'm not a dog.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think kind of going into that, one of the other questions I had presented was, I just recently was watching Trevor Noah's like nightly show, and then he had Chiamama Adichie on there. She's this African feminist, and she was just talking about women in political power and how they have to align themselves with like familial roles, like that of a wife or a mother, just to be considered a viable candidate in this country based on the historical context of women. And like how women kind of get pigeonholed into these relationships of having to define them just so they could be desirable. And so I thought that was interesting too, because she's like, when Hillary was running for president, they put initially at the top like wife and mother, but we never see when a man runs for political power, he's not husband and father. Those like attributes of his career doesn't matter. So
Yeah, I think that is definitely something that we need to, keep in mind when we talk about gender roles. Period. I think we've had some, movement towards getting rid of some of those gender stereotypes. We're nowhere near close to where it needs to be, but we're definitely better than it was, in the 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really great observation. When I was reading the questions, I was like, "Oh, that's fascinating." It made me think of how when Kamala, I don't remember this when she was running herself, but when she was picked as the VP candidate, when they started presenting her as Mamala. You remember how suddenly everybody was talking about her? Yeah, because her that's what her stepchildren call her. Yeah, Bubba, which is cute. I think it's
That's really
but,
cute.
yeah, but they were but it was interesting we said, because suddenly that became a part of the campaign, was that she's this mom and wife, and I mean, it didn't need to be. It's not her maternal skills that are gonna make her qualified for the job or not.
It's so funny that they think that that's an important attribute to leadership. It's just for women anyway. It's I guess it's that sense of wanting to see a side of family. If you could keep your family structure tight, then okay, that gives us an ability to trust you to run this country, regardless of whether men can do that or not.
I think that's the biggest part of it. If you're going to judge somebody on their family and that is representation of how well they're going to perform their job for the country, you should be holding men, you should be holding fathers accountable in the same way.
But I think that's the issue, is that men were never in this country measured up against their ability to be great husbands or great fathers. It's men can exist 100% away from those roles. We can see a man in his workplace and he's this bomb ass lawyer, and then he can go here and be a bomb friend, and he could go into this other space and be a great community advocate, whatever. But it's women carry the idea that she's a nurturer every single where that she goes. So it's almost even at work we have to be nice and friendly and comforting, even though my job has nothing to do with being nice, friendly, nor comforting. It's probably actually the opposite of that. So it's kind of this is what we're doing. And but even then, if you step out of that role, that's oh, this is a role that you are born into, this nurturer, even if you step out of it in a place where it doesn't matter, you get forced back into it.
You had said that men weren't held accountable to that. And on the 30th, we're actually going to be having our Tough Conversation series on hypermasculinity. Can you imagine if men historically had been held to being good husbands and being good fathers like that? What kind of a place we would be in society?
Yeah. I think we place a lot of value on men on being great providers. Right. It's that's the one husbandly, fatherly duty that we say that's your role. Be a great provider.
And as long as that's happening, it's you get a pass on everything else.
Yeah. But
And it's crazy to look at, because I think, also not just having kids, but also keeping your family close and being faithful to your partner. And for men, I think that's a story as old as this country, is being unfaithful, but maybe not being judged harshly in the political eye, and still having power and keeping power. But if the roles were reversed, if it was a woman being unfaithful, then she'd be cast out.
Oh my! I don't even want to see what that even looks like. It's it makes you cringe thinking about what would happen to her. Okay.
Yeah, I think we saw. Oh,
no, go ahead.
I think we did. We saw that a little bit with Ilhan Omar recently, because she started dating a guy, and people were like, well, he hasn't been separated long enough, and got a lot of commentary about that.
Okay.
Last year, maybe.
I guess I didn't see that.
Just kind of was yep, that's what that is, playing out in real time.
That's ridiculous, man. No bearing on what you're gonna do as a congressman.
I do think it's interesting. I did not know that AOC had a partner.
I know.
That time. I was I
also did not know that. I've never seen that before in my entire life.
He's good first husband material. I like that. I really like him in that role, because he's really and I think we talk about intimacy within those partnerships that we see in the political sphere. He plays a nice role of supportive boyfriend to her. Like, she's crying and he's holding her and like, it's gonna be okay. And then that allows her to go out there to be this like beast of a woman in this political realm. It's definitely the inverse of what we've been told, as women, like our roles are. Like,
Yeah.
that man is out there in a political fight and he needs to come home to a safe haven, the house that you make with your good cooking and your high heels and your good sex. And it's just like, he's like that version of that for her. And I thought that was the cutest thing.
I also thought it was really funny talking about like how we present as how we're expected to present in public. It was funny to watch them at events where she was like perfectly dressed, like makeup was perfect, her hair was perfect, and he was like in a t-shirt and his beard was kind of like patchy.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
It just hit me that when you said he was good first husband material, it was like of The Office, and not like the first dude you should marry before you find someone else to marry after that.
No, I'm like, he's good first husband.
Totally,
that's because you don't think of it like that, but that's exactly what I mean. Like, that would be a good first husband. First man of the house. That'd be really he'll be good for that. I see him. He'll be on the magazines. They'll say, look at all he's doing with his additional side campaign work. Maybe there'll be some feed the children stuff happening on the sideline while she's like doing some other big stuff. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, when are we thinking? It's 2028.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say because she was 28 and 18. And I was like, she's not gonna make it for 2024. Is that is like first wife, first husband? Are those things like applied to other positions other than the president, or is that the only one that we do that to?
Yeah. No, I mean the vice president.
Yeah,
I think
has like
governors.
the
second family. Yeah.
Yeah, governors.
Yeah,
because
That's a weird question. I don't know.
Because Emhoff is the second man.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of his first name right now.
Which is so weird to call him that, the second man. Calling anybody the first or second anything is like, oh, okay, whatever. No, but I think that's interesting. He's just like, when we talk about, and I think women who are in positions of power like that, whether you be in the political sphere or you're in some other position where you're high up or you're high ranking, I think they want men to be supportive like that. We want somebody to come home to and have that equal support as well, but we don't talk about that a lot. It's like, well, he's leading. He is this man that is going to provide and do all these things. It's like, well, what about the women who provide and want to come home to men who are loving and supportive and caring and nurturing? So,
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Moving along, if we want to, I think this was the most interesting part of all of this. Well, actually, there was a lot of stuff that I just couldn't stop writing about. So within the documentary, we are shocked to know that Joe Crowley, the current congressman representing at the Bronx at the time, he wasn't currently a citizen of the Bronx community. So the question I have is, how important is it for leaders to be citizens of the communities that they represent? And was it significant that Joe Crowley was not a citizen of the Bronx community, in your opinion?
I'm going to take this opportunity to call out Missouri Senator Josh Hawley for not living in Missouri. Call him out. He doesn't live here. He uses his sister's address to register in the state that he represents. He lives in Virginia, which is exactly what Joe Crowley did. Yeah, which is exactly what Crowley was doing.
Yep.
Crawley Hawley. That's actually a nickname that people have for him here.
Crawley Hawley.
Yeah. So obviously, it's a problem.
It is a problem.
It was. I think AOC was having a get together with some people, and one of them said, she was on the radio interview, and one dude said, if you dropped him in the Bronx, he'd get lost.
Mm-hmm. He'd get lost, and he even tried to. Oh, go ahead.
I think you find that a lot with a lot of politicians that they get the second home in Virginia or areas that are around DC because they expect that they're going to be there for a while. And I think that's a big problem. As soon as you think that you're going to be there for enough time to buy a house, Like, no, you work for us. You could be out in a day. I think that's a big problem. Is these guys get too complacent in their uh, feelings of just I can do whatever I want. I can live here. I just have to go back there every 4 years or 6 years or however many and say hello, and they'll
Right.
just keep me here.
I'm extra surprised that Hawley has decided to buy a house in Virginia since his sights are so clearly set on a house on Pennsylvania Avenue.
That's a hot take.
I'm not from
Yeah, it
Missouri.
just-
I won't
Heat
comment.
Even if, like Micah said, even if these politicians, I'm not saying you're wrong, Micah. I just don't understand their thought process because they think they're going to be there for a while, so they move out of the community that they're supposed to represent. And how can you understand the needs?
It's acceptable. I'm saying it's
No. I'm just like I don't understand the thought
We're all on
process.
the same page. We don't understand the thought
Like
process.
it's convenient for travel, I guess, but it's really inconvenient for the people you're supposed to be serving because you have no idea what's going on in the community.
House. Maybe
But I also think that
property at best in that area, like to and from kind of thing. That should not be your set address.
But I want you to look at look, Joe Crowley wasn't living in the Bronx community. If you know anything about the Bronx, you know that's one of the poorest boroughs in the state of New York. Yeah. It is covered with minorities of different ethnicities, and because of that intermix of those people, different cultures, there's an increased amount of violence in that community. Him not living there is a sign of saying, I'm better than this community. These are not my people. These are not my problems. But I like this position, so I'm going to continue to do what I want to do, how I've been doing it for as long as I want. And that is the thought process behind it. It is, I am bigger than life. I have this privilege. I have this protection because I know no one's going to get in here and run against me. No one's going to come against my power. No one can because I have all this money that I'm willing and dealing. And we already saw that when he was like investing in Jurgensen's her opponent in Virginia, and so he was able to will and deal the way he wants, and that is what allowed him to continue to feel secure and going unchallenged until he got wind of AOC's like brilliance coming through and saying, you know, I'm actually going to challenge you for this seat. That's when it got more serious, when he lost that first debate against her and he made himself look like a fool in front of her. That's when he started doubling back, saying, I need to get ahead of this. Let me go and put her up against another debate where I could kind of be more research. He didn't come to the first debate prepared. Like he was like, oh, she's just some minority girl slinging margaritas at the local, Mexican house. I'm good. The disvaluing, the undervaluing of that community and, her and her essence and her understanding her own community that she was born and raised in is the example of white privilege that we do not want to continue to see moving forward in politics.
Well, you combine that with the last thing that we were talking about, which was the gender roles of asking the women why, criticizing them for not being able to run their families. In the first debate, she said, you don't live here. Your kids don't go to school here. And so she was attacking him for some of those things that we've seen women be attacked for historically. And he had nothing to say. He said, well, I prefer to keep my kids out of this. Okay.
Yeah.
Which was better speaking, I prefer to keep my kids out this raggedy ass community, which is what he wanted to say.
He was talking about the community.
Yeah, I think it's important to note here while we're talking about the white privilege that Crowley carried, that he was the fourth most powerful Democrat in the country. He never won his election. He was appointed by some loophole. Mm-hmm. He never lived in the Bronx. He never represented this community, and he's been in that position since the 90s and go on to become the fourth most powerful Democrat. And just I'm astounded that happened.
I think the loophole that was used for him made him the Democratic nominee. I think he still won the votes.
Correct. He never got primaried.
Yeah. But who was he running up against? I think that's also another question is like who was challenging him.
Yeah, I mean,
that doesn't really matter.
What Republican could challenge him in the Bronx?
Yeah,
they even said getting the nomination essentially means you win the election.
Mm-hmm. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about the other night in meeting, and I think I talked a little bit about during the live stream. We have got to be better educated in our communities, especially minority communities, on who is doing what and how they're getting there. The fact that this man can be, since the 90s, be reelected, reestablished in this position, not meeting any of those people's needs, not engaging their community appropriately, not even bothering to come up to show up when it means something. Yet he continues to get the vote. He continues to be able to have the seat. He gets the salary, and he doesn't have to live here. He doesn't have to deal with the conditions that those people are dealing with in that community, the violence, the lack of economic resources, none of it. And yet those same people will go and say, "Oh, I'll reelect him." And the same thing with Lacey Clay in St. Louis, not doing anything for that community, but he gets reelected. So like we have to, as minority communities, whether you be Latina, Latinx, whether you be Black, you be Puerto Rican, whether you be Chicano, whatever you are, know your community, who is in it. Like, educate yourself, educate your family, talk to your friends, and say, we're done with the bullshit, we're about to change it up. And then I think that's kind of where, for me, AOC is like the champion, the superwoman that comes in and says, I'm going to save my community.
I mean, to that point, when we were talking to the guy outside in St. Louis, out by his truck, he said, that's one of the few people that it doesn't matter who else is running against you, just Lacey
Clay.
Since him and his dad since the 60s.
Doing nothing. Laissez-faire politics.
And it was passed from the father to the son.
Yes. Yeah. Like it's a crown.
Yeah. We're in Chicago. Well, I'm in Chicago. Me and Sam in Chicago. So we know a thing or two about dynastic politics.
Right.
Yeah. I had a couple of things I wanted to add to your comment, Shamika, where well, first of all, to go back to Crowley living in Virginia, it's particularly inexcusable because New York is not that far away. It's like an hour on the plane. You can take a train there. Yep. So I was like, oh wow, that's even worse. But I think something that I found really interesting while watching this documentary was the way that AOC leveraged social media to educate people. Like, that first debate where Crowley didn't show up, there was maybe like 40, 50 people in attendance, but they had that whole thing. They filmed it. They posted about it. They got it out there. And that's started to get the momentum going where people were starting to be like, okay, this guy who we've heard about and we thought he was standing up for our community, but look, he's not even here. And I think also I was thinking about how Cori Bush lost that election, but she's really managed to come back and leverage social media in a way that's very educational and very person to person. That feels very intimate almost.
Yeah, the intimacy of it.
Yeah.
I love seeing how all of the women depicted in the documentary were working together through the group. I think it was called A New Congress. Is that what it was called?
A New Congress.
That's an amazing idea. It's it's a group of people. It's not just women. The documentary focused on women, but they're dealing with regular people who are living in the communities that they could hopefully be representing. They're not going to take CPAC money. They're not going to take political donor funds. They're 100% grassroots, Shamika. But I think that's really cool to see that there's these groups out there that are working to promote real people with real ideas who are living in the communities that they are going to be impacting.
Piggybacking off of that, there was a bit in the documentary talking about how these entrenched politicians that have turned this into a career have gotten lazy. And it's like you have someone who's been working at your company and you can't even get them up from a desk from a meeting. Like they just don't do anything. And that showed in Crowley and how he didn't show up for the debate. The flyers that he put out that were just like, I'm standing up to Trump like 5 times, and then a picture of him. And that was the flyer. No information about how to vote, no information about when to vote, no information about any legislation he cares about. He just so low effort. And I lost my train of thought.
I think it's like an old school, new school approach.
Yeah.
His campaign, they're just like, if we get his name and face out there, when people sit down to vote and they don't know who they're really going to vote for, they're going to go with this name that they've heard of. And so they don't have a platform. They're not running on ideas. They're not running on what we're going to do. AOC is. She's running on, I'm going to fix this. I see these problems. I live here. Let's go. And that's why she was able to do what she did.
Yeah, and that's what the new Congress, I was going to say, really promotes is it's battling against this entrenchment and these really lazy politicians who have, just gotten complacent. And I think that's what we all really need to be more aware of is these old politicians that are just complacent and not helping their communities.
Complacent is nice. I would say they got bought.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it was amazing to me because you think of it as a little bit complacency, but also there is real effort that these people are putting into staying there. As far as when you were hearing from the Whiteheads talking about their ability to sue to get the names off of the ballot or the list, so you have to get way more names on your ballot signatures.
Petition,
Yeah, she had to get 10,000, and she only actually needs like
1250.
1250 to be on the ballot.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest problems about Crowley was not only is he the representative from the 14th district, but he was also the Queen's chair of the Democratic Committee. He was all of these things. He was the chair of the election board. And so he appointed all of these election officers.
Yeah, he appointed the judge.
So they're the ones who are going through these signatures, and that's why they needed to get 10,000 was because they thought, one out of every 10 is going to be unscrutable and make it in. And so they're just going that far over. I wish that they would have gone back, and after they had looked at it, they would have said these many got thrown out. I wonder if that's a public record. I wonder if that's something we could look at.
Yeah, they were talking about that and the ability that he has to basically just keep her locked up in court battles to the point that she can't actually campaign for herself properly. And
up until the day before the election.
The ability to put that much money to keep somebody else in court and just keep their time and effort locked up into just monotonous crap. It's embarrassing that this is the way the elections are actually being run.
That's not the spirit.
Time.
Right. That's not the spirit of the way that these institutions were set up in this country. It's not let me do whatever I can to hold on to this. It's let's see who has the best ideas. Let's foster discussion. Let's bring everyone together and we'll talk about what we want to do. It's not it's not supposed to be this political.
I think the institutions were created to keep some people out of the way.
Yeah, I think it's which rich white man had the best ideas, not which citizen of the United States had the best ideas.
No, I'm choosing to interpret them this way and then fight for them to be that way.
Yeah, but I think it's important to recognize the injustices that have been committed and the systems that have been built to keep minorities and women out.
It's the beginning.
And it's important to see that because we know that when politics is in this country are being formed, right, there's like a specific who gets to be here, who doesn't. And for a lot of it, it's always been characteristically white men. Women were not allowed to run for office. You weren't allowed to. We didn't get the vote till 1920.
100-year anniversary.
Yeah, so it's like, who's voting? Well, if women aren't influencing the vote, because men are the only ones who have the power, we're only going to elect people who look like us into positions, people who feel like us, people who cater to us. And if women, no one's catering to a woman because she can't vote. So it's like if we have this issue, then of course politics has always been geared towards, white Christian, heterosexual men. And now we see that that's changing because more people are getting rights, or at least being allowed access to their rights. And we see the backlash of what happens when we are having more access. There's always someone that's coming in that's like, shut down that train that's going to keep people from getting over on the other side of the fence to this building where we got, extra square footage of voting opportunities. It's like whatever we can do to prevent this from happening, because we are seeing a shift in the political sphere, something that we've never seen before in this country. And it's exciting, but it's like, what are other stops that will be pulled out to prevent people from getting access to these positions that we're trying to vote them into?
I thought it was interesting I mean, we hear about Republicans and voter suppression, but yeah, great, thanks guys. But I did think it was interesting the way that Crowley was marketing himself with those flyers that don't have a date on them, that don't say anything about voting for the primaries. I think that was very targeted. I think that was because people who vote every year and people who are really engaged politically tend to be people who are already with the establishment, right? So people who are new voters or less often voters are the people who are more likely to vote for anti-establishment candidates, which is, I mean, we see that with even with Donald Trump, with all these people who had never voted before or hadn't voted for like 20 years come out and vote for Trump. But the same thing worked with AOC, where people who hadn't voted or hadn't felt the need to vote for a long time because it's just been more of the same for so long, got excited and came out to vote for her. And so she had to be the one to put that date out there and make sure people were engaged and knew that was happening. Whereas he doesn't have to tell it to his people; they're going to be there, and reminding people of that date is not going to help him.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a little bit of almost like bordering on voter suppression.
At least playing with the idea of it.
Yeah, that's definitely a technique that people have used historically to suppress votes, is just hiding the date and keeping it not public information. I mean, it is public information, but that is definitely a tactic in voter suppression. And I didn't realize that until you said that, but maybe he wasn't lazy. Maybe all of this was very intentional.
Yeah, I do think, I mean, I think he was lazy at the beginning and then he got
scared.
Focused, yeah. To be fair, he did say one nice thing with the parade.
Yeah,
the Pride parade.
Yeah.
Yeah, when that constituent came up and he was like, "I'm not voting for that stupid woman," and he was like, "Well, she's not stupid."
Clearly, because she's beating him.
Yeah,
she's doing better than you.
I think it's important. I think I have this right. That was after the debate with the proxy, and so he was on blast at that point. He knew that he needed to start taking this seriously.
I think that whole situation with him being at the parade was very opportunistic. It was just like, are you really even down for these people? Do you even care about their plight? Are you really entrenched in their issues? And to have a constituent come up to him and say that woman is stupid, I'm not voting for her. It's like, do you represent these people too? Are those the same people that you're representing? And to have that person be at Pride in that space and then calling this woman who is of culture, diverse culture with so much going on with her ethnicity, stupid. It was just like, who does this man represent? Like, who are the people who is out here? Who voted for you? Like, who are these people? Like, because I was like, how can you represent that man, this event, and the people who are here, and someone like AOC who's in this community? How do you represent all these people? It's just like, I think he is a candidate that uses opportunities to make himself grander and uses those opportunities well so he can appeal to any community that he wants. So he's appealing to white liberals who are also more borderline like conservatives, and he's appealing to the super engaged LGBTQ community. He's appealing to the Latino Bronx community with and African Americans. He's appealing and changing who he is to fit the community, which is what, to me, a serious issue in liberalism in the Democratic Party.
Well, because it's all for appearances.
Yeah.
He shows up and he waves the pride flag and he comes to to downtown Bronx. He comes and he's showing you all of these things. Just like in his flyer, he shows you the face, him working with a diverse crowd of people there in the middle. But then when he actually gets to work in Washington, he's not fighting for the things that he shows he has support for.
It was intense just to watch him try to maneuver in that way. That made me kind of go, how many other politicians are doing this, to people of minority statuses, trying their best to get all of us to feel like they're with us. And in that same sense, not even engaging anything with any of us. It's just like, let me get this vote so I can go on ahead and do what I need to do. Let me act, let me perform in front of anybody whenever to get this done. I see more of that. Unfortunately, I see more of that with the Democratic Party. I see that more with liberals. Our politicians are more performative than I think, conservative politicians are, because they don't have to be. They can just say they all are. It's a monolith truly over there, so they don't have to do all this extra. Whereas people over here, you got to appeal to the Black community, the Latino community, LGBTQ. We all in here. You gotta make us all feel good. Then it gets performative, and I don't like that.
And we spent a lot of time talking about AOC and a little bit about Cori Bush, but I think on the same point, just to like highlight the dangers of these politicians who are entrenched, who are saying they're standing with us but aren't actually standing with us. I think what happened in West Virginia with Paula Jean Swearengin really just showed how dangerous this actually is. And when she's driving down the street of her town and pointing at all of the houses next to her that had cancer, because of what's been happening in the coal industry right next to her town and all the toxins that have been put into our environment by these politicians who are being paid by the coal industry. And that she is running for office to fight that establishment. And these politicians are, unfortunately, she didn't win her primary, but the politicians who are in power are doing this to our communities, and we're letting it happen.
And that was a Democratic primary too. This guy Manchin is a Democrat.
She did get a phone call at the end from Manchin, and he said, let's get together and talk about some of these things that you were passionate about. Hopefully that's sincere. We don't have a lot of reason to believe that it was, but hopefully they can get some stuff done. Hopefully having the documentary crew follow her around and shedding light on some of these issues is going to force some action in West Virginia in the coal industry, and especially now that Trump's out of office.
I mean, that sounds hopeful. It sounds very,
Always hopeful.
It's like I wish that were true. But when people are getting paid by these, big conglomerates or these PAC organizations, they have to carry that stuff through and through into the end of their terms, to the end of, whatever their political careers, because they are laying in bed with them. Now you're taking, campaign funds. They're supporting you in so many different ways. You have to go in there with their interests. You're here now. So it's like, I would love to see that be a realistic hope, but I don't see that. And I see that this person is doing whatever he can because she has some pull, right? She has some people following her. He wants to also make it where he can get those people in his grasp as well, so that there isn't a deterrent in the future to what he wants to accomplish.
Well, like as I was saying that, I kind of thought maybe it would be, if something didn't happen, it would be because of the support that she was able to garner. It's almost like when Daniel Snyder, for years and years, he said that he would never change the Washington football team's name. And Pepsi and Tostitos and all these other sponsors started pulling almost $1 billion worth of ad revenue, and all of a sudden now we're going to have at least 2 seasons of the Washington football team. So it's not that change is going to be done because these people suddenly become they see the error of their ways and they're have become altruistic. It's because the money is going to step up and say, we can't do this anymore.
And they're being threatened. Their position of power is being threatened.
Yeah.
So they have 2 options: carry on and potentially lose, or swallow up what they're trying to do and absorb that into part of your platform.
I think this also kind of plays into this the incumbent is the devil, So the reason that Manchin and Lacey and Crowley, and I don't know who Villela was running against. I don't know if she was running against an incumbent or not, but the other 3 were definitely running against these longtime political people. And I mean, they got plenty of people to vote for them every time, right? And I think that's because a lot of people are willing to go with what's there, because what is different could be worse. I was especially thinking about that with Cori Bush. Because obviously she's standing up for these people in this community that is, and they're not looking for her to stand up for them at that point.
Right. Well, and that's what they were talking about when they first went to St. Louis and were talking with Cori Bush, was that this is a Black family, which means it's father son. It's the city has been voting for these Black men who are assuming, they're part of our community, they're going to take care of us, and it just hasn't happened. And they're hoping on that to continue winning those elections.
Or also in the West Virginia, where this guy is a Democrat who's pro coal, but all these people are coal miners. So, are they going to risk giving up their livelihoods for their overall?
It's really hard to see.
Well-being?
Yeah, it's really hard for them to see that it would be better without this when it's basically the number one
That's all they know.
export for for the city, for their lives and their families.
Virginia has a whole lot of its own issues, though. There's so many documentaries right now, the opiate crisis that boomed there as a result of coal mining and the physical pain that it puts on people's bodies, and it's a decimated town filled with drugs and a lot of other issues. So I kind of felt with seeing her, I was like, I knew she was for an uphill battle. There's so much happening there.
And the little history that we got about politics in that area from her mom, where it said that people who stood up against the coal industry, back in her daddy's day, would disappear, and she doesn't feel it's changed that much.
And we forget that some of the biggest labor movements were out in coal country.
Yeah, the biggest.
Yeah. So we are about out an hour, so we might want to wrap this up. If anybody doesn't have anything to say, I do have one last thing that really just stuck with me from the movie. Just a line from Corey Bush that I really loved. But if anybody has anything else to say, I'd like to close with that.
I just I really liked when they were having the debate. It wasn't the one on New York One. It was the in-person one with AOC and what's his face. And he said, I just want to know why you were supporting this guy, and because he cut his girlfriend's face with a broken beer bottle. And she's talking about how I'm not supporting him. I'm at the only Democratic Latinas, right? And I'm here talking to crosswalk guards. I'm talking to teachers. I'm talking to these people, and that's why this is important. And you don't understand that. And so he started the fight, and then it just pans back over to him, and he's just like,
That was my favorite part.
It was a epitome of a backfire, and I just love that.
Poor man. He didn't have a chance. I think the only thing I would like to say before we wrap up is, we just need to support more women and minority women in politics, because again, women are doing so much and have been for a long time, and it's important that we allow our voices, I guess as a woman myself, to be heard. I think specifically in the Black community recently, Goldman and Sachs has an initiative right now to release $10 billion to African American female businesses. And I thought that was such a cool initiative, but it just goes to show this is, women of color are worth investing in. And so, they have great promise. So I think we need to do that politically as well, just not financially and economically. We need to be doing that all across the board, because we've had, the same type of people in positions for too long, whether you be blue or red or other. We want to see more people. So I think doing this is so important, and highlighting voices in this way is significant. So hopefully we see a trend of this happening more in the future.
I also think that if this documentary drove home anything, it's that anybody can do this. It's not, you don't have to be a lawyer, you don't have to have a Harvard law degree. If you see something that you can fix, then you can be the one to get up and do that.
Absolutely. I started gearing up for my next campaign.
Ciao.
Okay. Yeah, so the most memorable part of the entire documentary for me was, I think it was when it first introduced Corey Bush, and there was a book that said something about rebellion, and the pastor she was with said, well, if this isn't about you, I don't know what is. And she said, quote, fix it and I wouldn't have to rebel. And that was just so powerful for me, because these, it's looked at as like a rebellion, these very young progressives who are fighting against the establishment. But if they fix the problems that we're facing, if they fix problems our minorities are facing and women are facing, then we wouldn't have to do that. We wouldn't have to rebel. But they didn't. So we're here.
We're here.
Absolutely. was a good point. I like it.
As the
So-
piano plays in the background,
Yeah.
solemnly. And we're here.
Great.
Well, thank
Okay,
you
so
much, guys. We're here for an hour. We've got our website, standupforequity.org. We are on Facebook and YouTube at Stand Up for Equity. We're on Twitter and Instagram as Official Soof. We're joined today by Alannah. She's with the Valkyries. Go ahead and hit that one more time.
Yeah, Valkyrie Ensemble. ValkyrieEnsemble.com. Find us on Twitter, Instagram. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Actually, don't look for us on Twitter. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, everything else we got.
Hey, come through TikTok.
great. And Alannah, if you wanted to maybe shout out a couple events you guys have going on.
Oh yeah, we do. We have a couple events coming up. We have a Earth Day event. We're writing a whole new piece for Earth Day. It's like a 3-act drama. It's gonna be really cool. And then we have a Mother's Day event as well called Mama Spill the Tea. Yeah, and we also we have a podcast. And I think our second episode. Now I think it came out last week. So you can also check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Valkyrie. Oh, it's called our podcast is called Cracked Glass, a Valkyrie Ensemble podcast. So
Fantastic. Well, we appreciate it so much you join us today.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Everybody else, come back on Friday. We're going to be breaking down the top 5 poems of March. You still have today and sometime tomorrow. Go like, share, comments on your favorite poem. So the top 5 are all getting broken down. And then the Tuesday after that, we're having our Tough Conversation series on hypermasculinity. Super stoked to be doing that.
So if you know a male or a man in your life in general who you think can benefit from it, just DM us and we'll give you guys the link because it's a confidential and anonymous group. And it's just a good way for men to talk about their vulnerabilities or lack of vulnerability as it concerns hypermasculinity. So we're here for it. Let us know.
All right. Thank you so much, guys.
Bye.
Okay.